right, let's get into it. Please help me welcome Dr. Cheryl Wood.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's
Thank you.
nice and early where I am, 10:02 a.m. So on a
Yeah,
Saturday morning. Thank you for
yeah,
having me.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, let's start from your book. I read this book. It's really interesting. I was fortunate to have a signed copy from you, right,
Yeah.
during the conference. So, what motivated you to write this, The Speaker's Edge?
I just celebrated 15 years in the speaker industry on September 18th, so last month. And so right before that, I knew that I was going to be coming to the Toastmasters International Convention. And I'm like, you know what? I want to do something special that I know will add value to the people who I'm going to be engaging with and connecting with at the international convention. And I'm like, well, what better way than a book that gives them real proven strategies? And I really focus on the word proven because I've learned a lot over the past 15 years of being a public speaker, traveling all over the world, amassing this amazing opportunity of touching lives and speaking into people's lives and their dreams. And so, why not share that? I believe a big part of our legacy is connected to what we share with others. And
Yeah,
so, I decided not to just share it verbally, which that's kind of my sweet spot, but
okay.
also to put it in writing so that as many other people as possible all over the world, because Toastmasters, that is an international opportunity. So to get that book in the hands of people all over the world, whether they were in Hong Kong or live in Africa or the UK or the United States, I knew that it would add value. And that's a big part of my legacy, is adding value as often as possible for as many lives as possible.
Good, good. Thank you for sharing that. So, especially when I saw the word proven, that's a very strong word.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good strategy. Yeah, yeah, good, good. All right, so let's get into how you started your own public speaking journey. When did you know that you really like public speaking, and how did you start?
Great question. So, again, I'd have to take you back 15 years ago. I was working in a corporate setting, corporate environment. I was working as a legal secretary for law firms and for certain companies where I would work for their in house counsel, their general counsel, or their law department. And I had done that for about 13 or 14 years. So, I knew how to do it, I was good at it. And if I can be very honest, I felt like that was probably going to be the height of what I was going to do in my life because of my background. My background was that I grew up in poverty and in an underserved, underprivileged environment. I did not have a college degree. And so it was like the world was telling me I wasn't good enough to excel beyond that space of sitting in a 10 by 10 cubicle as a legal secretary. And it's sometimes when the world keeps telling you that, you start to believe it if you let it really sink in and you don't disrupt what they're telling you. So for a long time, I believed it and I stayed kind of stuck and comfortable where I was. But there was something inside of me that was craving for more. And I believe when you have a calling and what I believe is a divine assignment on your life based on something that you have that's a gift or a talent, I believe it will not leave you alone. It will keep tapping you on the shoulder until you kind of wake up and pay attention. So in 2009, again, still working a corporate job full time, I decided to start a business. Now, I didn't know what business to start. I just knew I had a desire for some type of freedom, financial freedom. I wanted creative freedom. I wanted time freedom because I was a mom of three. And I didn't want to feel like somebody else was raising my kids because I was gone 12 hours a day on a job that I didn't love, but the job did pay the bills, and that's important. So I just decided to start a business. I didn't know what to do. I just decided, okay, I'm going to start a t-shirt business. It's going to be called Moms Are the Best because I was just so in love with being a mother. And I was like, all
Hmm.
right, let's just see where this goes. I did that for a full year. And almost a year later, I got an invitation from a local university up in Baltimore, which is my hometown, Morgan State University. They were hosting a women's conference. And somehow someone had seen my t-shirts, come past my table at a vendor event or something, and asked if I would come in and speak at their conference to teach other moms in the Baltimore community how to start their own businesses. And I just thought, why would you invite me to come and speak? I'm not a speaker. I have no experience. I have no expertise. I don't have a degree. There's no letters behind my name. Like all this head trash was in my own mind. But then I had to acknowledge that if an opportunity knocks, there's a reason that it's knocking, and you have an option. You can say yes or you can say no. But if you say no, it then becomes somebody else's opportunity for a yes, and you miss out on what it could potentially be. So nonetheless, I said yes. I went to the speaking engagement at Morgan State University for their women's conference. It was September 18th, 2010. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was so nervous. I felt so unqualified. I was like, why did I say yes? I should have said no. But I knew I had to follow through with my commitment. And that was the beginning of my speaker journey, because when I got there that day, as nervous as I was, my palms were sweaty and my heart was pounding. I still, when I got on that stage, there was something ignited inside of me that I had never felt before. I'd never experienced that level of excitement, enthusiasm, energy, passion. And then when I looked out into the audience and I could see the women taking these notes, and I'm like, wait a minute, they're taking notes from what I'm teaching? And then I could see some of them with tears in their eyes and trickling down their face as I was sharing my story about why I was there, which was to try to find a way to create freedom for myself. I realized the power of words and the impact it can have on the lives of those who are listening. And that for me was the beginning. That was the aha, or the light bulb, to say, there's something more to this. And you owe it to yourself to be curious enough to explore where this can take you.
Wow. The impacts that it can make. That's when you started, wow, this is really what you want to do. Yeah.
Yes.
That's really powerful. So now, just quickly thinking about where you are now, making impact, how we connected, and we are having this conversation now. If you quickly can look back to when you started, what is one thing that you wish you knew about public speaking that could have changed the game for you that you know now?
That's a great question. I think I wish I had known that it didn't have to be perfect for it to make impact. I think so many speakers feel like every word has to be perfect. Every line has to be delivered exactly the way you practiced it. And really, that's not true. From all the many stages that I've graced in the past 15 years, from NASA to the United Nations to Prudential and Capital One and Verizon and XM Bank, and the list goes on, my speeches do not make the most impact because they're perfect. Sometimes I forget my train of thought, especially at this seasoned age now. Sometimes I forget my train of thought, or sometimes I fumble a word because I'm human. And that's not what people are looking for. They're not looking for a perfect voice on stage. They're looking for a relatable voice where they feel seen and they feel heard. And they ultimately feel like they can see themselves in you, because you are vulnerable and transparent in sharing not just your highs and your triumphs, but also your wounds and your struggles that you've gone through to get to where you are.
Wow, interesting. It's not about the perfection. It's about being present. That's part of what you shared in your book that we're still going to get into.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us, our guest. Please let us know where you're joining us from and say hello to our guest. And also, if you have any question for our guest, please put it in the chat and we can also read that during the session. One of the things that I really like from your style of public speaking and your technique is the talk method and the build the case method. The talk method. So you talked about how you use the TALK method and the build the case method. What is that about?
So I believe that all of us have the ability to talk ourselves into greatness, to talk ourselves into the things that we feel like we're not qualified for or we're not good enough for. And many times we'll talk ourselves out of things. We'll talk ourselves out of taking a risk. We'll talk ourselves out of getting on the stage. Even for me, for Toastmasters, sometimes people will talk themselves out of entering the speech competitions because they feel like they're not good enough. But I really want to shift that philosophy of thinking that you're not good enough and talking yourself out of it, and instead realizing that you are enough just as you are and talking yourself into it. And so that framework is just about, number one, telling yourself the truth that you can do it. You have what it takes, even if you've never done it before. And then really affirming that through how you speak to yourself, the words that you pour into yourself, the same way I pour words into others in a positive way that ignites something inside of them. I have to be able to do that for myself. I have to be able to, I usually have a clapper, and I'm sure I have one somewhere around my desk here, a clapper, and I always am clapping for myself and cheering for myself, because sometimes I might be the only voice in that space that's there to cheer for me. So I have to be my own biggest cheerleader and affirm that, yes, you can do this. Of course, it's supposed to be scary because you've never done it before. Of course, it's going to be unfamiliar and uncomfortable, but that's the only way you stretch. That's the only way you grow and expand, is when you're doing something new and uncomfortable. If I do the same thing that I've always done and I know how to do, you know how people say that expression, oh, I could do this. I do this so well. I could do it with my eyes closed. Or I could do it with my hands behind my back. Okay, all that means is you're comfortable and you're not growing anymore. Now it's time for you to pursue something that stretches you and makes you feel a little uneasy and uncomfortable. So we have to reaffirm that, yes, I can do uncomfortable things that are unfamiliar, that scare me, but I can still come out as a winner on the other side of that. And then we have to make sure that we are leveraging the evidence that we have. Like, what have you done that has proven to yourself that you can do tough things, that you can do scary things? Because throughout your life, I'm sure there are things that you've done that you perhaps were terrified of initially, but now you're a pro at it. You're an expert at it. So the same way you do feel that way about that, it's the same with getting on stage. You have the ability to leverage the evidence of the things you've done, the hard things, the scary things, the unfamiliar things that you've done in other parts of your life, and apply that same mentality to speaking on stage. And then, of course, I mean, really knowing your worth and getting to a space where you consistently acknowledge, I am enough, and that you really peel back the layers of why you don't feel like you're enough. Where did that language come from? Where did the belief come from? And how do you disrupt the belief so that you can plug into a new belief system? And then when I talk about the build the case methodology, so again, I mentioned for almost about 14 years, I worked for law firms. I worked for attorneys. And I've never, ever seen an attorney get ready for court and not have any evidence to go to court to win the case. They always come with evidence so that they position themselves to win the case. So you have to build the case. You have to position yourself with all the expertise that you have, with the resources that you have, with the evidence that you have, to be able to win the case that, you know what, I belong on stage. My voice matters. It's up to me to make it count. And I don't have until tomorrow. I've got to start doing it today, because tomorrow isn't promised for any of us. So I always encourage people, instead of creating a to-do list, create a today list. Like, what are you going to do today, right now, in this moment, just in case you don't get to do it tomorrow? Because again, none of us are promised tomorrow. So that's what I mean when I talk about talking yourself into greatness and really building a case for why you belong on stage, why your voice matters, why you should be sharing it, not only on stage, but also in books. Because this is a part of sharing your voice, is putting what you know, your knowledge, into books. So verbally, in writing, however, whatever platform you possibly can, your job is to share what you know, your lived experiences, your stories, the wins and the wounds, the triumphs and the failures, with someone else, because your story is about you, but it's not for you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Very powerful. Thank you for joining us, Yemi. Thank you for joining us, Abiola Balogun, on Instagram. Powerful. If you have any question for our guests, please put in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from. One of the things that I really like from your book is you talked about the pre-speech power ritual. Pre-speech power ritual. So when you speak, is there anyone that you go to easily, the one that you really like to use for yourself?
You know, my family, they kind of giggle at me. They laugh at me a little bit, because I am big on talking to myself when we talk about talking to yourself. But I do it in a way where I am reinforcing for myself, you got this. Because it doesn't matter how many big stages I've been on, where I've spoken at in the world. I mean, I've spoken in South Africa and India and Europe and all these parts of the world. I just came back from Barcelona, Spain, for a big speaking engagement. Last year, I was in Athens, Greece. But every time I'm about to take the stage, there's a level of nerves that get to going, right? And people are surprised by that because they're like, well, you're such a good speaker and you're a pro. That doesn't mean anything. What I'm most concerned about when I take the stage is exceeding the expectation, exceeding what the audience thought they were coming there to get. I want to exceed that. I want to go above that. And I want to give them an unforgettable experience where they feel like I either, number one, I didn't know who she was, but I will never forget her now. Or number two, I heard about that Dr. Cheryl Wood and woo, they were right. So that comes with a certain level of anxiety, a little bit of pressure to make sure that because all of us, we're only as good as our last performance. So anyway, so I have this thing where I kind of like act like I'm in a boxing ring and I kind of got my arms up and I'm like, come on, Cheryl, because I'm reminding myself that I am getting in the ring. I'm getting in the ring to fight my own fears, my own doubts, my own self-doubt, anything that is going contrary to what would make me powerful on stage. I am about to be in the ring to fight that and to remind myself that, Cheryl, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter where you grew up. It doesn't matter what other people think. Only thing that matters for this next 30 minutes or 40 minutes or however long I'm on stage is you being the most authentic, vulnerable, transparent version of you that is here to serve the audience. And that requires me to be at my fullest level. And that means I've got to fight off everything else that's competing with that. Imposter syndrome, the stuff that still shows up for your entire journey. So that's my kind of my precursor to getting on stage. I'm kind of like doing like this, like punching, like I'm in the ring, and I'm talking to myself and you got this. You've done this before. You're about to knock out the fear. You're about to knock out all apprehension. You're about to knock out anything thinking that somebody's going to judge you. You're not here for that. And I'm literally having this self-affirmation boxing talk with myself to remind me, you got this and you will come out of this ring as the champion.
Wow. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful. That's something to do that is really powerful. You mentioned something just now, vulnerable. That's part of what you emphasize in the book. The most interesting thing about vulnerability is that you said in your book that vulnerability builds trust.
Yeah.
But it's still very common that people try to stay away from being vulnerable for the most part. Is there any suggestion or motivation that you're willing to share as to why people should consider being vulnerable when they are sharing their story during a public speaking engagement?
Yeah. Again, from my perspective, if you don't want to be vulnerable, you have to ask yourself, am I really in this for the people? Or am I in this just to say I was the keynote speaker on stage and it strokes your own ego? And I think when we don't have vulnerability, it's because we're really just stroking our own ego instead of really being there to serve and pour into others. When someone's sitting in an audience and they're going through a certain pain point in their life, they don't want to hear your perfect story. They don't want to hear about your success. Like, how many of you have ever been broke and one of your friends, just hit the lottery for 2 million? You don't want to hear. I mean, you're happy for them, but at the same time, you don't really want to hear a whole lot about that. You like, look, I just want to go in my little corner and I want to sulk because I'm not in the position that you're in. So it's very hard for people to be in a space where someone's in front of them and they're talking about all of their success and all of everything they've accomplished and all these achievements and where they are in life and what their bank account looks like. But I'm sitting in the audience trying to figure out, how do I get there? That's a very hard pill to swallow, as we say. So the thing that makes it more relatable is the vulnerability. So I can get on a platform, I can get on a stage and I can say, today I'm a 2-time TEDx speaker. I'm a 7-figure business earner. I've written 28 books. I've spoken for NASA, the United Nations, this place and that place. I've been to 15 countries and hosted events. I can say all of that. But if I don't give the follow-up to that, which the follow-up is ... but it didn't start there.
Yeah.
If I don't include the it didn't start there, half of the audience is going to tune out because they can't even relate to my level of success. So they
Yeah.
don't feel like there's anything in this speech for them because I've started off with all the great things I've accomplished. But if I never pull in the balance to that, which is, but this, that's not where I started. And I always say, if I'm in my chapter, my amazing, wonderful chapter 15 of this speaker journey, then y'all can imagine chapters 1 through 14 was probably a hot mess, right?
Mm-hmm.
That instantly breaks the ice. I'm like, because chapters 1 through 14 was me trying to get here, me going through the struggle, me facing my fears about whether or not I was good enough to be on a stage of this magnitude. It was all about me feeling like if I came to the front of the room, people were going to judge me, and I didn't want to be judged. It was, and I started being vulnerable about how I got to all those accomplishments and achievements. And every time I do that, it softens the hearts of the people in the audience to say, oh my God, well, wait a minute. Maybe I should lean in a little bit more and listen to what this person has to say because she sounds just like me. Or if it's a gentleman on stage, wow, he sounds just like me. In fact, so many people, the biggest compliment I get is when people come running up to me after a speech and they say, oh my God, you were telling my story. That means they were able to see themselves in me through my struggles, which means I now open up a door for them to see themselves in me as a part of my accomplishments. Because if I can push through being a brown girl who grew up in poverty and end up here, if I can push through having fear and imposter syndrome and end up here, if I can go through not having a college degree but end up here, if I can, you can. And at the end of the day, that is our job as speakers, is to make the audience feel more hopeful about something they can have that they don't currently have. So that's how deep vulnerability goes. It's allowing the room to see themselves in you so that they can also believe that what has been possible for you is also possible for them.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I've seen people do on the stage, though, that is a modification of what you just shared, is just now sharing their backstory and just staying there with the audience, like sinking down and not bringing the mood back up, and then say, well, even though I went through all that, I was able to come back up and achieve this and achieve that. That's it. Once in a while, I see speakers do that, and it seems that they just bring the mood down and they never bring it up at any point.
Well, it's up to you how you do it. Either way, you're still including both. You
Yeah.
must include, as a profound, unforgettable speaker, you must share the high and the low. So whether you start with the high and
Mhm.
oh, I've done this, and because they just read your bio, right?
Yeah.
Most times when you come on stage, they're reading a portion of your bio, and she's done this, and she's been in Essence, and she's been here, and she. So the first thing I like to say is let's just get that out of the way. Yeah, that bio, let me tell you, it's real sexy. But it did
Mhm.
not start there. Like all that stuff, all the speaking here and speaking there and being featured in Forbes. And so for a lot of times, for me, it's easier to start from that point because you just heard this amazing introduction of me. And
Yep.
now my job is to break down the walls that you've created because you heard that I'm this amazing, perfectly sounding person. And so I immediately go from that into, but here's what I need y'all to know. It did not start there. That
Yep.
bio is great and it's juicy. But let me take you back 14 years ago when I first started. So that's one way. Or yes, you can take them low and you can tell them, I can tell them about my 14 years in corporate America when I was dropping my kids off at 6 a.m. and not picking them up till 6 p.m. And they were in somebody else's care 12 hours a day. And I felt like I wasn't even a present mother, and that wasn't okay with me. I sat in a job that told me this is how much you're going to make because you don't have letters behind your name, and who devalued me because I didn't have a college degree, even though education and intelligence don't education, lack of it doesn't mean you don't have intelligence. So I can tell that story and then come up from that story and say, oh, but were they wrong? Because what I've been able to do is I've been able to accomplish that. So either way, I don't care if you take the high and come low or take the low and come high. You must share both sides of you. You must share the successful side of you because that creates possibility in the minds of the audience. but then you must be vulnerable and share the low side of your story because that creates relatability.
Wow, thank you. Relatability. That's very important. Thank you for joining us, our guest, Dr. Cheryl. If you're joining us from anywhere, please let us know where you're joining us from and say hi to our guest. If you have any question, please put it in the comments so we can know the question you have and direct it to our guest. One of the things you've mentioned just now is TEDx, right? I can imagine that a couple of people will try to know if they want to be a TEDx speaker, how they can achieve that. Is there any suggestion or support you're willing to offer as to how you became a TEDx speaker?
Yeah, so it's so interesting. Different platforms have different processes and different, I'll say, ideologies in terms of how a speech is delivered. So even with Toastmasters, when I made it to their top 28 semifinalists last year, their way of speaking and presenting is very different than how I generally speak on stage, right? There's some differences there. They have their own kind of blueprint. It's the same way with TEDx. So TEDx isn't as much about storytelling. I mean, they like storytelling, but they're more about big ideas. What is the big idea you have to share with the world that would be applicable to any person who turned on that TEDx speech and watched it? So they're very intentional about what's the through line for your speech. Here's the one idea I want the world to take away from this. So when my first TEDx speech, it was all about an angry Black woman, which is a saying that we hear oftentimes.
Yep.
And I said my thought process was, or my idea was, being an angry Black woman is a bold thing, not a bad thing. And I broke down what being an angry Black woman really looks like to the world and how the world sees it versus what it oftentimes really means for a woman that looks like me. Oftentimes when I get angry, I'm the most productive. My anger doesn't necessarily lead to chaos. My anger leads to productivity and me wanting to do something about a problem that I see and wanting to create a solution for it. So oftentimes I'm in my most creative spaces, my most determined spaces, when I am angry about something that perhaps an injustice or something of that effect. So that was the angle that I took on my TEDx talk that allowed me to get accepted in. So I would say, number one, really refine and be very, very crystal clear on what your big idea is. And make sure that it's something where you can pull every person of any age, gender, race, ethnicity into that conversation. Because even though I was talking about angry Black women, I made sure in my speech that I spoke of how allies who were non-Black women could also support us in what the topic was about. So I didn't leave anybody else out to say, this is only a speech for Black women. No, it's a speech for humanity to understand Black women better. Okay. So that's important as well, that you're able to approach it from any angle and anyone who's listening to it. And then to actually get your application accepted, if you will. I'm not a pro at it, but I don't teach that. But what I would say is what worked for me was making sure you get connected with people who are curating TEDx's in your own backyard. So in your own zip code, your own city, your own state, or maybe an hour or two outside of where you live, that's the best place to get connected, because now, number one, you can go to those events that they curate. You can get connected with the curator, develop some type of relationship, and start. I believe we have to speak into existence what we want and start speaking and saying, my big goal is to be on a TEDx stage. I would love to have a conversation about what that would require. What would that take? What are you looking for? And then get online and do your research. Look at the TEDx talks. Watch how people deliver. What are the ones that are your favorite, and why were those speeches your favorite? What are the commonalities that you see in your 5 favorite TEDx talks? What did they do that made the talk stand out for you as like this spark of transformation? And then you want to start slowly but surely incorporating those things into your own speech. And I say into your own speech because you should have the speech before you get the stage. You should not be waiting for someone to say, oh, we want you to speak at our TEDx event for you to create a speech. No, you should already have that. Now, maybe you'll make some tweaks to the speech based on recommendations, because again, TEDx is very big on vetting and making sure that the information that you share is accurate. It cannot be something that's non-factual. It cannot be an opinion. It has to be real fact. So tweaks might have to be made before you give the presentation, but you can already have I already had a speech ready.
Yeah.
I didn't wait until somebody offered me the TEDx stage to try to get ready. So I always say, just, be ready so you don't have to get ready. So to wrap all that up is, number one, go and watch TEDx talks and find your 5 favorites and find out what's the commonalities amongst your favorites. Why did it magnetize you? What was it that was so magnetic about the speeches in commonality? Number 2, start going to TEDx events that are being curated in your own zip code, your own local city and state, and go to those events, not even before you get booked for it. Go and start making connections and get to know the curator and make sure that they know that you have a desire, because a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So it's important that you make it aware, make it known that you want to be on that TEDx stage, and start nurturing and developing that connection. And then practice a speech before you actually are hired to do the speech, and make sure it has one big idea. That is what will get you 10 steps closer to delivering a TEDx talk.
Wow, thank you. That's very powerful. That's what people pay a lot of money to hear. I hope people are taking notes. This is practical tips from our guest. Thank you for joining Fusai or Shuyombo on Instagram. Tell us where you're joining from, and if you have any question for our guest, please put it in the chat. And if you're also here, please let us know where you're joining us from. That's very powerful. I'm going to go back and listen to that myself very well. It's because it's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
One of the things that I observe when I hear people speak, often I see people run out of breath when they are speaking. And I wonder, I can imagine that could be for different reasons. All right. But then if you want to advise somebody to not do that, or to prevent that happening to them, what are the things you would suggest for them to do so that they understand breathing? Sometimes I feel somebody who's going to like fall off the stage when they're speaking because the way they're breathing and things like that. Any suggestion on how to prevent that?
I would probably say it's their pacing of their speech. So I feel like a lot of speakers they learn how to be loud and energized and all this, but you can't stay at that level for 45 minutes. Most speakers, you're going to run out of steam, you're going to run out of breath, and more importantly, you're going to exhaust your audience. No one can stay at a level 10 for an entire 30 minutes, 45, 60-minute speech. It's exhausting. So you've got to learn the art of pacing and learn how to take a pause. There should be some things, just like now. I can talk, I'm very energized. I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. Overall, my predominant style is, I call myself the energizer. So I actually have a speaker impact archetype assessment, and I'll share that because people can go and do it for free, and it'll let you identify what's your predominant speaker style. For me, I am the energizer. That's what I'm called. However, even as an energizer, I understand that I will deplete my audience of all of their energy if I'm only at a 10 my entire speech. So there have to be times during the speech where I soften my tone, I slow my pace, I lower my volume, and I shift from energized maybe to something a little more serious, because I really want you to understand how powerful your voice is. So now I might, again, you can tell everything is shifted. I'm not wailing and flailing. My volume isn't high. I am serious, because I want you to know that if I can, you can. And then I can lean into the audience. It's so important that you don't diminish the power of your voice. Don't diminish it because you're comparing it to someone else. Don't diminish it because of where you came from and where you grew up. Don't diminish it because of what you don't have. Somebody somewhere in the world is waiting on the very thing you've been sitting on. Just take that in for a moment. In fact, I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Are we ready? Let's do that together. Yeah. It feels good to be reminded that your voice matters, doesn't it? I want you to look to your neighbor and just say, neighbor, we need your voice. Neighbor. That's just an example of how I would slow things down. I'm pacing. My pacing is slower. I'm giving myself a pause from the energized passion up it, right? Every audience needs an experience. I love theater. I don't know how many of you go to theater, have been to theater, or enjoy it or don't enjoy it. I love going to see plays, especially in New York on Broadway. And I don't go to a play or theater and only watch a 2-hour play that's only sad. You can't get me to a play that's sad for 2 hours. I don't go to theater and watch a play that's only happy and excited for 2 hours. I don't go to a play that's only funny for 2 hours. No, there literally are ebbs and flows. There are parts in the play that are sad, that are pulling at your heartstrings. Then there are other parts that are comedic. Then there are other parts that are serious and maybe put you into deep thought. Then there are other parts that are happy and jovial and joyous. And so just like theater and a play, you also, as a speaker, you are delivering a performance. And you want to make sure that it's unforgettable in the minds and the hearts of those who are listening by giving them a variety of emotions, a variety of pacing, a variety of volume and tone. All of that adds to it being an experience, not just another speech.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I first learned when I joined Toastmasters is the crutch words, right? And people that are not speaking within the Toastmasters system will try to always speak and use and trying to see if that's gonna people perceive them as if they're flowing very well, because they think that if they keep speaking, that means that they are fluent, right?
Right.
But then, like as you just explained, that's not true. That's not true.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
We have one of our participants here joining us, Nyawira. That's from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for joining us from Nairobi, Kenya.
Yes, Kenya in the house. I love it.
Thank you. If you're here, please put your name in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from so we can acknowledge you and also receive some questions from you for our guests. The time is running very fast. One of the things I still really like from your book is the fact that you said it's very important as a speaker to share the spotlight during the speech. And I can almost imagine that that's something that people will really like. Yeah, you're in the front speaking. It seems that you're the most important person in the world, but then once in a while, you can also make the audience feel important. So what are the strategies you've been able to use to achieve this, to give the audience the spotlight also?
Mm-hmm. I think giving the audience the spotlight, it's important for me to help them become aware and acknowledge how far they've already come. So if I'm talking to an audience of new, emerging, and aspiring speakers who want to be on bigger stages, they want to master their message better, they want to become better at storytelling, and maybe I'm, giving a presentation on this, it's important at some point that I say, now let's hang on. I know we're talking about getting better. I know all of us feel like our best is still in front of us. We still have so much we want to do, so much we want to accomplish. But can we just take a moment? Because I don't feel like we do this often enough. Can we just take a moment to celebrate how far you have already come? If you have already spoken on your first stage, I want you to stand up. Come on, y'all. Give a round of applause for the people you've already done that first stage. If you are speaking regularly on your own podcast and you had the boldness and the courage to launch that podcast, that's still a stage. I want you to stand up. All of my podcasters, stand up. Fantastic. If you have done a video and you spoke into the lives of the people who are watching in your community by putting a video up on your YouTube channel, or maybe you did a Facebook Live, or maybe you did a StreamYard, I want you to stand up. And all I'm doing is, and at the end of that, I want to say, so can we just acknowledge I am already doing the work? And I have them give themselves a round of applause. And I'm having them to take their seats, because it's important that people so often we're so busy pursuing the next thing that we forget to acknowledge the first thing.
Yep.
Right. And so putting the spotlight on them, that ignites something in them to say, you know what? Wait a minute. You're right. I didn't even stop and celebrate the fact that I did my XYZ. I didn't even celebrate the fact or acknowledge, or nobody celebrate. I didn't even have a celebratory hand clap or anything to acknowledge that I actually launched the podcast, as terrified as I was. And now I've done my first 400 episodes or my first 25 episodes. I haven't acknowledged and celebrated the fact that, you know what, I've been consistently putting videos up on my YouTube channel for the past 4 months. Every week I've been putting a video up. And the acknowledgement is such an important part of progress. Because if you don't feel like you're progressing, you will stop. I'm a testament of that as it relates to health and wellness. I'll get started. I don't know how many of you have ever been on a diet. I hate the word diet, but a wellness journey. I've been on my wellness journey. You know, I'll release some weight. And then if I don't celebrate it and I'm like, okay, wait, I didn't even acknowledge that I just dropped 5 pounds. Then what happens is I get stuck in that space because I feel like the 5 wasn't enough because I was really trying to lose 20. And so if I don't stop and shine a spotlight on what I've already done, I'm not ignited to continue the journey. So for me, every time I lose 1 pound, I'm like, yes, I lost another pound, right? Because I'm going in the right direction. So I'm always shining a spotlight on everything I've done. And here's what I did to lose that pound. I didn't have carbs this week. I worked out 3 times this week. And then I'm thinking, now, how do I get more? Okay, well, if I want to go from 1 pound to losing 5 pounds, well, maybe this week I'll work out 5 days and I'll do my 30 minutes on a treadmill. Maybe this week I'll eliminate sodas and I'll replace it with water. So now my brain is looking for solutions to how do I double or triple what I already accomplished. It's the same way when you're shining the spotlight on the audience. Now they are forced, right? Kindly, willingly forced, if you will, or encouraged. Let's say that they're encouraged now to take inventory of what they've already done, what they've already accomplished, how far they've already come. And then to say, but here's where I want to get to. So imagine if I double the effort that I've been putting into my speaking engagement. Imagine if I send out more requests for proposals to people, letting them know I'm a speaker. Imagine if I stop doing just 1 video a week and I start doing 2 videos. Imagine how many more people I could actually impact. Imagine how many more stages I could get on. And it encourages them to acknowledge what they've done, but to acknowledge that there's more to be done. And then to see how far they've already come so that they know they have what it takes to go to the next level.
Wow, it's powerful. Powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Another thing you mentioned in your book is the fact that there are examples of signature gestures, moves, and phrases that can be used constantly so that people can be accustomed to the speaking style, things like that. And in your own case, is there anyone that you've developed or you see somebody develop that you really liked?
Yeah. So one of my sayings, my expressions that people repeat all the time. Well, actually I have 3. One of them is visibility will always trump ability. Visibility will always trump ability, because visibility gets your foot in the door and your ability will then keep your foot there. That I have more people who share that little saying than, even the Les Browns of the world are sharing that expression. There's another expression that I say, and I even said it today, which is somebody somewhere in the world is waiting on what you're sitting on. So there's some lived experience that you have, there's some knowledge that you have that you're just sitting on. You're doing nothing with it, but somebody else somewhere in the world, they're waiting on that. And then my third expression is your story is about you, but it ain't for you. So that's examples of expressions. In terms of gestures, I'll share one that I really love. My fellow speaker, Delatoro McNeil, who is a World Hall of Famer. He's phenomenal. He does this kind of a matrix move, and he has people, everybody in the room is doing this, right? and he's become known for his matrix move. So that's an example of like a big gesture. Or you might have a call and repeat. For example, Lisa Nichols, one of my coaches and mentors, and she'll say, yes, 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 yes. I want to hear you say it again. Yes, yes. And the audience is like, yes, yes. That's kind of a call and repeat. So there's an example of each. There's some expressions that I am typically known for. There's the movement, the gesture that I mentioned is Del Toro, and then the call and repeat with Lisa Nichols, the yes, yes. So I'm hoping that's helpful to give you examples of what that can look like and sound like.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Well, one of the things that you mentioned in your book that I really like is the fact that people do distracting things or say distracting things during their speech. Example of that is many thank yous and apology. People apologizing.
Yeah.
And any suggestions on how to handle thank yous and an apology during speeches? What do you do? What's the best practice for you?
Just get into the speech. Like you can thank people later. You can apologize later. First of all, let's talk about thanks and let's talk about apologies. Let's start with apologies. You don't want to apologize for whatever's happening. So sometimes you might hear a speaker say, "Oh, I just want to say, you know, I want to apologize in advance because I'm really not feeling good today, but I decided to push through anyway and come here." Nobody cares. And I'm not saying that in a mean way, but they expect that you are a professional who has gotten a check and you were hired to be here. So, okay, at the end of the day, humanity wise, yes, I'm sorry that you don't feel well, but I don't want that to be the first words out of your mouth when you get on a stage because it makes me feel some kind of way. So now I'm more tuned into, are you going to be able to make it through this speech? And oh, is she feeling well or he not, or is he feeling well versus your message? Don't distract the audience in that way because now you put all eyes on you, the person, instead of the message that you're delivering. That's number one. And then number two, I would say, as far as thanks, as soon as you get on the stage, they call your name out. Our next speaker, Dr. Cheryl Wood, y'all give it up. I come to the mic. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. First of all, stop saying that. That's not every speaker says that. I'm so excited to be here. No, I hope you are. If you were not excited to be here, there would be an issue. We would have a problem if you weren't excited to be here. So you don't have to open that way. Be different, be unique, stand out. I don't want you to get up there and use your first 2 minutes to thank everybody. I want to thank the organizer and I want to thank this person for having me and I want to thank that person. You can thank them later. You can send them a handwritten card. You can send them a fruit basket. You can thank them once you get off the stage, right? Like, don't use your first 2 to 3 minutes of your speech for that. Use your first 2 to 3 minutes to captivate the audience, to intrigue them where everything else that they were doing or thinking about doing, they immediately stop. So just think about people. I mean, most of us are attached to our cell phones, right? Even me, my cell phone goes everywhere. So even with a speaking engagement, you'll sometimes see people on their phones, they're checking emails or they're sending a text or they're posting on their social media. They're not, the eyes aren't all on the speaker initially. It's your job to get all eyes on you, where they go from this to, okay, wait a minute, who is this and what are they about to talk about? That's your job, is to interrupt everything else that they are doing or thinking about and get all of their attention on your message. And so for me, I am very intentional about not thanking and apologizing when I open. I go straight into my speech, which is usually something that allows the audience to engage with me, because from the onset, I want them to know this is not going to be a lecture. This is going to be a dialogue. A dialogue means I'm going to talk to you and you're going to talk back to me, right? A conversation. And so one of the ways I might do that is I might say something like, hey, I want everybody to stand up and I want you to repeat after me. But hold on. Before you repeat after me, I need you to commit that you're going to give me your level 10 energy. Can y'all handle it? Yeah. Are you sure you can handle it? Yes. All right, let's go. I am a winner. I am a winner. I think like a winner. I think like a winner. I act like a winner. I act like a winner. Winning is in my DNA. And they're repeating this. And all that's happening is that their energy is just heightening right at the start of my speech. That is really less of a speech and a lecture and more of a conversation. And so now they feel, and then at the end of that, I say, now I want you to go and I want you to find 2 people you don't know. And I just want you to look them in their eye and tell them, I see you, winner. You're in the right place at the right time. Now the room is buzzing. It disrupts everything they thought I was going to do, because they thought I was going to be like every other speaker. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so excited to be here. I want to thank, and I want to thank, and I want to thank. Look, that is outdated, played out. That was back in the 1900s. We are in 2025. Level up your game in speaking. Do something different. Stand out. Engage the audience. People want to feel like you're connecting with them. And that's not by giving a scripted opening where you're thanking everybody or you're apologizing.
Wow, powerful, powerful. Thank you so much. When I first started Toastmasters in one of my clubs, a distinguished Toastmaster will always be furious and angry when somebody apologizes. He will say, "We don't apologize." That's what he would say. And I didn't understand then, but now as I grew as a speaker, I understand
Yeah,
why he was usually very angry when people just stand up and start apologizing for things that we know you made a mistake. Just keep going,
exactly.
that kind of a thing. One of the things we really have to mention is the fact that you have a global speakers university.
Yes.
And how did you start that and how is that going?
It is such an amazing, robust community of speakers. And we really call ourselves a family because that's how we feel. In fact, I had 20 of my GSU speakers who went to Barcelona, Spain with me just a couple months ago, just last month, so that they could get the experience of speaking on an international stage. And the year before that, Athens, Greece, and the year before that. And so it is a robust community of passionate speakers who know that they're not done, meaning they want to continue growing. They want to continue elevating. They want to continue refining their message and creating new messages of impact and pulling in new stories that will transform lives. So I came up with it. It took me years to start a community of speakers because I didn't just want to have another speaker group. I first of all, I wanted to make sure I was equipped and qualified, if you will, to lead other speakers. And from my perspective, that meant I needed to have a full rounded personal experience of what it was like to be a unknown speaker
Mm,
all the way up to being a very successful, highly paid, renowned TEDx speaker. I needed
mm.
everything in between. I know what it feels like for nobody to know you and not to make any money, and you're struggling trying to get on stages and get people to give you a chance. And I know what it feels like to get paid $20,000 to do a keynote from home where all I have on is my top, but I got my pajama pants on the bottom. So I thought it was important for me not to start that community until I had a really full holistic view. I've been trained by the best in the industry, everyone from Lisa Nichols to Les Brown to Eric Thomas. The list of the experts and gurus in the speaker industry that we're familiar with, I've invested to be trained directly. So that positioned me, I feel like to be equipped to be able to lead other speakers into their next level. And now it's been a number of years, and it's one of the best things God downloaded to me for me to do. And I'm looking at continuing to grow it. My goal is 5,000 strong, 5,000 members strong in the next 5 years. That's my goal.
Wow,
Yes.
good. That's it.
Yes.
That's a powerful thing. Thank you for sharing that. That's really good. And I know a lot of people are going to benefit from that.
Yes.
One of the things that I also like from your bio and also from your experience is the fact that you have experience with the media outlets, Forbes, ABC, Fox News, and things like that. Any lesson from your interaction with the media outlets for people that are maybe just starting, that they are not where you are
Mhm.
currently? Any helpful suggestions and interaction with the media outlets,
Yeah.
something that they can avoid and something they're supposed to look out for?
Absolutely. Anything with media, first of all, start with your own local news stations
Yeah.
and come up with your own ideas of how what it is that you speak about is relevant to two things: current events and also ongoing, let's say, holidays, things that come up, because the news is always trying to keep the most current information in front of their audiences. So if you know there's a holiday coming up, if it's Thanksgiving or if it's or if it's a certain month, it's breast cancer awareness month, and you have something that ties into that theme of the month, or that international holiday, or some type of international event that's happening, or international news, or even local news, pitch to your local stations first. The local will get you to the national. So you've got to start somewhere. And then in terms of how you interact with the media, learn how to be concise. Now, today we're here for an hour, so I can be a little more long-winded in my responses. But I know that when I go to news, I'm usually going to be on a 3-minute segment. Most news segment, it's 3 minutes. If it's something where it's a current topic in the news, the world news, they might give you 5 minutes. Most times it's not 5, it's 3. And that the 3 includes them, the person who's interviewing you, introducing you, giving their little comments. They got to close that segment out. So now it really boils it down to about 2 minutes of a segment. You have to know exactly what you're going to say. You have to, I would say, practice some sound bites. I call them sound bites, which are just kind of quick one-liners that you can say that people will be repeating after they hear your news segment as it relates to what it is that you're going to be speaking about. So 2 or 3 sound bites, almost like, remember how Oprah used to always say, "Oh, that's a tweetable." I don't know if you remember that. Well, think of a tweetable. Think of a tweetable like, wow, that was good. Like if I were to say, so again, it's important that we get out here and we make use of our voice, because look, visibility trumps ability. Visibility will always trump ability. That's a sound bite. That's a quick, they're like, oh, that's good. Something where people are going to respond in a positive way and they can easily remember it and repeat it, because that will get you even more visibility. And then the last piece I would say with news is every news segment that you do, they're always going to require for you to send them a brief script of what you want to talk about. And they usually will ask you for 3 to 4 bullet points of whatever you're speaking about. So if I'm coming and I'm talking about how to be a more effective public speaker, then they're going to ask me for 4 bullet points. Okay, here's how you do that. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And they normally will do at least one screen while you're on air where they'll put your 4 bullet points up on the screen. The thing is, sometimes you will get an interviewer who does not stick to the bullet points. Wow. And so you have to be able to know what you know your core area of expertise so well that even if they go off script, the interviewer, that you know how to bring it back around to what you want to talk about. That's a craft, that's a skill that you can master over time. So just practice it. Know your talking points so well that even if the interviewer doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, you can incorporate it before that segment is over. I've had that happen to me so many times. And so it means that you have to practice your impromptu speaking. That's why your Toastmasters comes in. They're great for that. Practice impromptu so that you're not thrown off because the interviewer said we were going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, but she didn't even talk about anything that I sent. You have to still be able to make your point, even if the interviewer goes off script.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Last question. I usually like to ask one question that has at least nothing or less to do with public speaking. And this is the one for you. What is a belief that feels that you are the only one that have it? What is something that you believe in that it feels like it's only you, or it's not a popular opinion by so many people?
What's a belief that only I have, or about myself?
About life generally, or about yourself, that it feels like you're the only one that have it, or it's not a very popular opinion.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know, but I will say, I don't know if it's not popular, if I'm the only one. But I will tell you something that I'm I'm very strong in my stance, is that every person has the ability to turn what seems unlikely into what becomes undeniable. Wow. In fact, I have a brand new book that's going to be coming out. I'm going to show it to you really quickly. This is just a picture of it because I don't have the book in hand yet. This is my brand new book that's coming out December. I'm so excited. And it's called Turning Unlikely into Undeniable. And I feel like a lot of people get labeled with this title of, oh, you're going to be unlikely to accomplish that thing, to achieve that amount of money, to build this or grow that or build that or impact this many lives. people have that label. They get that label of being the unlikely person. You're underestimated, you're overlooked, but you have the ability to turn that unlikely into the undeniable. It is undeniable the impact that I've made over the past 15 years. It is undeniable that I've ushered hundreds and hundreds of speakers into becoming authors because I've published 22 book anthology projects, 28 books total, but 22 have been book anthologies where I've ushered others into theirs. So now they get a little closer to their undeniable. It is undeniable that I have traveled to 15 countries and spoken into the lives of people who don't look like me and reminded them that they are enough just as they are. I am undeniable, even though I started out as unlikely. And if I can, you can. That's my belief.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's my last question. Anything you want to say to our guests today? How can they contact you? Any program or conference you have coming up and things like that?
Yeah, I'm going to throw out there the SpeakerCon, my 7th annual SpeakerCon Leadership and Communication Conference, which is coming up in 26 days. It is free. It is free. You owe it to yourself to come and listen to these sessions over the course of 3 days. It's November 6th through 8th. You can go to speakerconconference2025.com. speakerconconference2025.com. And all you have to do is register for your free ticket, and you'll have access to all the sessions across 3 days. We'll talk about everything from leadership, branding and marketing of your brand, sales, networking, but we'll also talk about all things public speaking, message mastery. We'll talk about storytelling, and we'll talk about how to connect authentically with audiences and strengthen your stage presence, and how do you become unforgettable. And we'll talk a lot about AI and how to, in fact, our theme this year is lead with heart, leverage with automation. So we want you as speakers, leaders, authors, coaches to continue to be the authentic you, but also to work smarter, not harder, by tapping into the technology that is available to us. We want to make sure we stay at the forefront of that because it's not going anywhere. AI is not going anywhere. And you don't want to be the dinosaur in the room who's the only one not using it because it scared you. It's nothing to do with scaring you or you not knowing how to do it. It's your willingness to learn how to incorporate it as a part of your growth and how you get to touch more lives across the world. So I hope to see you there at SpeakerCon. Again, speakerconconference2025.com.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Cheryl Wood. This has been a very enlightening session. I've learned a lot. I'm going to go back and listen to this session. If you are here, please help us thank our guests for being here. And if you still have questions later, put in the chat. We can always get your question across to Dr. Cheryl. Thank you for being here, Dr. Cheryl. I really appreciate your time, your knowledge, and your experience on this platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.